And we're live tonight. So, welcome everybody to this Behind the Screens with Lawrence Lee. And we welcome David also from KnownOrigin. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, as usual, we'll pass on the word to David, who's going to give us a quick intro about the series and the KnownOrigin platform. David, after you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David Moore, one of the co-founders of KnownOrigin. We are a digital arts platform built on the Ethereum blockchain. We specialize in limited edition digital artworks. We're one of the leading platforms in the space, and we essentially get established artists and emerging artists into the crypto art scene. And tonight on Behind the Screens, we have Lawrence Lee, aka Notorious Gang of One. We have had Lawrence on the platform for a fair few months now. He's super engaged in the community, and Lawrence is the kind of person, when Lawrence talks, people listen. He's a great artist, and we're super excited to have him on Behind the Screens. So without further ado, I will hand back over to Serena. But if in the meantime, if you want to share your questions on Twitter, check us out on knownorigin._.io, and I will get all the questions over to Lawrence and Serena. But have a great night, guys. I will shoot off, and you can do your thing. I will be in the background asking questions and chatting to people, but I'm really looking forward to this one. Thanks for your time, Lawrence, and have a great evening on Behind the Screens.
Very good. I will. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, David. We'll see you soon. Okay, so Lawrence, it's very good to meet you and very good to have this conversation with you. And I welcome everybody on this live talk today. And just following up on what David said, feel free to send over your questions, thoughts, and we'll be able to talk about everything you want tonight at this Behind the Screen series. So, Lawrence, I'm very interested in knowing how you got started as an artist, but not just as an artist, but also in the crypto art scene. Give us a quick intro about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm going to start out and see if I can share my screen here, because I've got available the only existing known early work of Lawrence Lee. So here we go. Let's see now. There we go. Can you have I shared the screen, Serena?
Not yet. We might see in a moment, but you should all know that last night, Lawrence and I had a brief conversation, and I had the pleasure to get to know Lawrence a bit better and really understand the ways in which the art is created and the inspiration. So I'm very happy to share all of these with you tonight.
How are we doing? Can you see that yet?
Not yet. Would you like me to try?
Yeah, why don't you try?
Okay. Where should I go first? In your 01 folder?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So I'm going to be sharing you some art and tell me if I'm in the right place.
You are. There we
Wonderful.
go. Folks, this is how I got my start. I think I was probably in second grade. And, if you had listened to my mother, you would think I was a child prodigy. I think this drawing of Donald Duck shows how that would be an inaccurate assessment. But it's how I got started. And I went from that. Serena, if you'd go to the next image, I went from that to being a full-time professional artist. I taught secondary education after I graduated from college, where I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a Master's in Art Education. And I came back to Tucson and started teaching. And on summer vacations and weekends, I worked on my portfolio and started to sell. And then in 1979, I took a leave of absence and could never afford to go back. And I made my money exclusively from selling my art from 1979 until I retired in 2000 and moved to a Caribbean island with the love of my life. But
Wow.
then life continued to happen, and I'm back in Tucson and painting again. And that's just a quick shot of my studio. So let's see.
Shall I move on to?
Yeah, move to the move to the next one.
Okay, so bear with me for a moment. I'm just going back. Okay. Shall we stay here?
Sure, that's fine.
Or maybe here.
Well, that's best. Okay, in 1978, those were the dark ages. This was in an era when color monitors had just been released for the public. It was 8-bit color. I was limited to a total of 256 colors, which doesn't, it sounds like a lot, but not compared to millions. And of course, at the time, there was no such thing as anti-aliasing. So everything had jaggies, and there was nothing to do about it. So I incorporated that in my plan. This is The Mirror, was a children's book I wrote and illustrated on a Mac II computer it was 87 or 89, something like that. But it is widely recognized as being the first children's book ever to be illustrated in color on a computer that then made it into print. It was published by a small publishing company here in Tucson. And so that's how I really got started with it. But I continued on, and Serena, if you'll, yeah, there we go. Then about 30, let's see, now it's about 50 years ago, I started thinking about another book, A Field Guide to Dragons. And this fellow here is called Draco domesticus. He's the common house dragon. They're well known for gathering lint. So when you see lint under your bed or under the sofa, it's probably a house dragon that's been at work there. And nobody knows whether they do that just because they're COD or whether they are building a nest or what. But I started illustrating it way back in the 80s, and finally a few years ago finished a series of illustrations and self-published the book. That was just something that was on my bucket list. But that was another very early development for me. And let's see, now Serena, you can do the next one if you want, or you can move ahead, whichever.
Okay, I'm just going back onto 03. Here we go. So thank you everybody for bearing with me, because I'm just going through some folders here. But I love this conversation with you, Lawrence. There's so much stories attached to the creations that you've made, and I just, I'm so fascinated just to hear it from you.
I'm of the age where I'd better get some of this stuff down because I'm going to forget it before long. So this is good practice for me too. But what you're looking at now is a painting I did 4 or 5 years ago, and I wanted to show you the not so much the shamanistic painting there, but it's the figure that's on the painting. That's a kind of an iconic image that is common here in the southwestern United States. It's a figure called Coco Pelli, who was one of the I don't know whether he was a god or something else, but especially relative to the Hopi Native American cultures in northern Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to show that to you because I was collaborating with Bard Ianson a few months ago and saw, Serena, if you'd go to the next image. There, I saw this. It was the output of a generative adversarial network that Bard was developing, and I saw this image, which doesn't make a lot of sense to people. But
and was this an image created by Bart, or was it a collaboration you did together?
It was a collaboration, and this was one of the things that his AI spit out after processing hundreds of my paintings of shamans. And this one attracted my attention because I immediately saw Kokopelli. If you will go to the next image, you will see.
Oh, here we go.
Then you might go back and you can toggle between the two and you can see what I found there. And I'm interested in showing this to you because, you know, there are so many people that call themselves artists who use these GANs and neural networks and things, and they go through the output and find something that looks cool. And I know I've done it too. You can do that. But the deal is, most of those things are not finished, and it takes an artist to finish them. And I think this is a very good example of how that can be done. So I just took that output with the white in it and transferred it to an iPad Pro and started drawing. And I drew in the face and the forearm and hand and the flute. And I'm very pleased with the result of that. But I have a thing about people calling themselves artists who, in my opinion, haven't paid the dues. They don't deserve that appellation yet. I told people when I graduated from high school and was teaching, or graduated from college and was teaching, that I was an artist, but I qualified that and said I was a teacher, but I also do and make and sell paintings. But it wasn't until I retired from teaching and went to art full time and started making my living that way that I really felt that I was an artist. And I remember I had to get a bank loan not long thereafter, and it was an amazing thing where you had to put in your occupation. And for the first time in my life, I said professional artist. Yeah, that's great.
That must be, that must be a great feeling, I suppose. But can I also ask you, I know you touched on the subject of what artists mean, what it means to be an artist, and can you give us a description of what that means for you? Who should be called an artist?
Well, I think it depends on how you qualify it. Of course, in the old days, an artist was somebody who did visual arts. And then somehow, starting about 20 years ago, musicians decided that they ought to be in that club too. So now musicians call themselves artists instead of musicians or songwriters and things like that. So most anybody is an artist, and I don't, people can call themselves whatever they wish, I suppose, but I don't think that people that are really pursuing art as a hobby should be calling themselves an artist. I mean, honestly, if you're a bartender, that's how you make your living, and you play around with painting or drawing or something on the weekends, I'd consider you to be a bartender that enjoys doing some artistic things. So that's kind of, in my mind, that's kind of obvious. And I'm that'll probably anger some people, but I'm old enough that I really don't care.
No, I think, everyone should be free to express what they think. And, I can tell you that in my, if I can share something about myself, in my experience, I've done so many jobs. to finally do something that I enjoyed doing for most of my time, during the day. And there's no shame in do jobs that pay your bills, and especially when you travel abroad. And I think still, if deep inside you, that in your life you want to practice being an artist, you'll get there. That's my experience in life. So.
And I agree. There are people who have art deep in their soul, and they are almost driven to be creative. And if that's your foundation, yeah, you belong in the club. So I understand that, and I'm sensitive to it. But a lot of the digital art, a lot of the crypto art I saw, perhaps a year ago, was not good. I'm sorry, but it just lacked the kinds of things that are important to people that really study art. I will share with you a quote from the wonderful painter Edward Degas, who said that painting is easy when you don't know how, but very difficult when you do. So think about that. If you're playing at it, it's easy. Anybody can do it. But once you start to study it and discover the importance of things like visual balance and what it means to have a sensitive line and understanding contrast and value and how paintings work and how you want the viewer's eye to move around the image and what you want them to focus on. Those are things that I think real artists do. So, I understand that people will argue with that, and I understand the point. I will bow out pretty quickly.
I don't see any questions now because I'm looking at the work. So I just wanted to tell everybody that you're most welcome to share your questions and thoughts, and I will get to them very shortly. But I want to ask you a question now, Lawrence, because you just make me think that I would love to ask you, what did you not find in crypto art, like, let's say, a year or two ago, that you may find now?
It has been stunning. I complained for a year that most of the crypto art I was seeing was, I can't say French anymore. I'll say, pardon my Polynesian. It was crap. People that didn't know how to draw were putting these things up, and just.
But do you think that was part of the movement, like these freedom?
Well,
do you think that characterized crypto art in a way?
Perhaps at the beginning, but as I'll swear, in the past 6 months, there has been a sea change. And if you look at the work being done by most of the artists that are being onboarded now, it is terrific. These people know what they're doing. There are all kinds of styles, but they artistically, they're very successful. I have very eclectic tastes. So some pieces that are generative art are fascinating to me, as are the things that are being done in 3D and people working in the virtual world as well. The things they're doing now are just breathtakingly good. So I'm really happy that this has happened to the market. And what it means is that pretty soon I'm going to have to stop talking about all the crap.
Shall I change the image here on the screen?
Sure.
Shall we move on?
Move on. We'll see.
Let me go back. onto the next folder. And actually, let me quickly check if there's any questions. Sorry. Cool. All right. So there's a few comments. Let me see. Okay. Let's break for a question. So have you noticed any difference between BFA schooling when you attended versus now?
Well, I really don't know what they teach now, except I think they have begun to recognize that it's important to let the students know how to make a living. When I was getting my BFA, my professors they were really bad. They didn't know how to draw, they didn't know how to paint, and they would show me their CV, and it might be an inch thick. And you'd look at all the pages, and it was how they won 4th place in the state fair in Iowa. And so all they did was they'd make art and then ship it off to these places, hoping to get awards. But they were teaching, and nobody knew how to make a living actually making art. I had to figure that out on my own when I left. And I believe that more schools now that are that have BFA and MFA programs are at least making a stab at giving people information on how to make a living, because it isn't easy. I saw some data just a week ago by somebody in the crypto art community that indicated that 98% of artists who attend a school to get something like a BFA never end up going into art. They just get out of it. And that of that 2%, only 1% makes their living as an artist. So
wow,
we're pretty rare birds.
And do you think the crypto art scene has somehow changed that, or do you think it might have the potential of changing these percentages in the future?
Interesting question. Yeah, I don't think it has changed anything yet, but it really has the potential to change that, because I was doing digital art, as you know, literally for decades, and there was no way to monetize it unless I did some kind of editorial illustration and sold it to someone. And it wasn't until the crypto art field was developed with smart contracts that there was any way to successfully monetize. And as the crypto art community has continued to evolve, it's working more and more towards solving the kinds of problems that have kept most serious art collectors away from that system, because it has been so difficult for people to work through. Well, first you've got to go to a website and set up a cryptocurrency account, and then you got to set up MetaMask, and you have to do this. There's a whole series of new words that people have to learn. And I'll tell you, most of my collectors are over 50 at least, and they bail after the first 5 seconds. But those are the kind of people that you need to bring into the crypto art community, because they're interested in art. And this is just another way to get good art. So if there's an easy way for them to get in and make their purchases, and then some way for them to either receive a physical copy, or perhaps better for crypto art would be to show the works on one of the high resolution screens that they're now being created in picture frames. And I purchased a system like that a couple of months ago, and it is a delight. I have my art on it. I have my girlfriend's art on it, and the company that I'm getting this through makes available thousands of works of classical art pieces and works that I've never been able to enjoy at length. I now get to see every day, and it's very fulfilling. And I think if some bright young people come along and figure out a way to combine crypto art with those kinds of displays, then if there's a way to bring people into the system easily, it's going to change everything.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And I do hope that this is going to happen in the near future, because it will be very wonderful to have, it's like having a library at hand that you can go through and see any book you want and read anything you like. It's like a Kindle, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Maybe, I don't know if that is correct to say, but I do enjoy having my digital books in my pocket. So it might be interesting to see how art may feel like to be streamed on screen.
Well, and there are websites now that are art streaming platforms. That's what they do. And I worked for a couple of weeks getting images ready for one of those systems called Loop Art, and that's going to interest people. The more digital work that is available, because with Loop, people, if they see something they like, they can contact me or go to my website, or they can purchase prints or in fact, original paintings if that's what the artist is doing. But man, as soon, in painting, when you start working with a new gallery, it becomes apparent very quickly that the most difficult painting to sell is the first one. Once you get the first one on somebody's wall, it starts working for you because they don't want to hide it. They want their neighbors to see it. They will tell people all about it. And that is a great way to create more interest in your work. And if they don't have to have the same thing hanging on the wall, if they don't have to make that commitment of thousands of dollars to enjoy this piece, but instead can just have it on their big screen TV or their projection or a mural canvas or one of these streaming sites, well, so much the better. It's going to be terrific.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you some other good questions now. So Crypto Art is asking, how has it been working with Bard Johnson?
Oh, I knew nothing about Bard when he contacted me about a possible collaboration. And it turns out that I think I'm not really sure. He works for some mysterious company on the East Coast doing computer things, and he's a coder, and he worked for a long time doing these amazing explorations using oscilloscopes. That's old, 1940s technology, and then he was using those to create art. And the collaboration was very, very easy for us. I don't know whether it was his personality or mine or the combination. And we recognized that we were both feeling our way around something new, and we both had to be willing to experiment. So he would ask me for some input of images, and then he would do his coding magic and create something new, and he would put them in I think a Dropbox that we shared. And so everything new that he produced went there, and I got to go look at it, and we would talk about which direction to head. And then he might need, I would suggest that, well, I could use this image, but, it could be helped a little. And he would go back and do some more magic, and he would bring me something better. And I'd say, okay, I can work with this. And in that process, we created a whole bunch of really good things, both from still images to animations. And I was just extremely pleased with the collaboration and the work it produced. And when we stopped collaborating, it was with the idea that we had not abandoned that collaboration. We were both going to try to figure out how it might go in different directions in the future. And I'm working on some things now that are directly tied into that earlier collaboration.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I had the pleasure to virtually meet Bart Janssen, and I have to say it was so incredible to talk with him and understand, the work he does, and very fascinating. So I will invite everybody to go and see his work. It really deserves, to be seen and enjoyed. I was gonna also quickly ask you, you've never met in real life, have you? Because that's the beauty of like digital artist collaborations.
No, we've never met in real life. We've never spoken on the phone. We communicate on Discord or by email. So
I think that's an interesting factor to be mentioned,
Yeah.
And then next questions, again by Crypto Art, is who's your favorite crypto artist? Could you name one?
I like
just the one.
Just the one. Oh, good Lord. 6 or 8 months ago, if you had asked me that, I would have said without hesitation that it was Glass Crane. His VR work was just astonishing. I couldn't really wrap my head around how he did it, and I still can't. But since then, as more really good, capable artists have come on board, there are too many for me to pick one. As I said, I have eclectic tastes, so I like a lot of stuff, and I also despise a lot of stuff. Anybody,
that's a good answer.
But anybody can do that too. You're all welcome to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's also here a very lovely comment by Karan saying, I love to hear these from you, Lawrence. I'm working in generative art, 3D, plus the virtual world. Your work has largely influenced and fueled the work of present artists.
Well, that's
a lovely comment.
That's great. I've, like everybody else, well, no, I shouldn't say that. When you make your living as an artist, you're having to pay attention to some things that real artists aren't supposed to have to worry about, like making a living. And usually what happens is that you follow the leader. You follow what is being sold. Because, I gave a talk about a year ago to a group of art collectors here in Arizona. And I impressed upon them how important they are as collectors. I told them that they, to a large degree, they determine what is going to be available in galleries. That is determined by their prior collecting behavior. Because if they are only buying large paintings, if large paintings are selling 10 times better than small paintings, guess what? There are going to be very few small paintings the next year, because these artists that are doing it for a living are following the money.
The demand. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And here in the Southwest, the people that are interested in Western art, for instance, might be, there might be a year when everything is horses because people are buying horses, and the artists will get together and say, well, did you see Joe over there? He sold both of those horse paintings. Maybe that's what we ought to do next year. And so next year there are all these horses.
And how do you think then, themes can change? Do you think that somebody sort of breaks out with a new idea and then others may follow, or how do you think these trends work?
You know, I don't think anything has changed in that respect for literally thousands of years. Artists,
We're so predictable, right? As
well,
humans.
yeah, but you know, artists. I think who was it that said art is either revolutionary or theft, because you're either copying. You've artists in the Renaissance were looking at each other's work. I mean, most of them were in this located in the same area, and they would hear things and see things, and they'd see, well, okay, the Medicis. You know, the Medicis that's a big banking family, rich people. That's dirty money. You know, they're corporate, but they they paid for a lot of the classical art that people think is some of the best that's ever been done now. And then later on, artists were the artists that were revolutionary. People like Pablo Picasso, on his return to Paris in 1900, that's often viewed as the beginnings of modern art. But Picasso and his brethren in that time, their art was really, it was revolutionary because it was trying to bring recent discoveries in the world of physics. What Einstein was thinking, and Niels Bohr and some of the other great physicists had begun to teach us that the world may not be as it seems, that there is this space-time continuum that's all together, and there may be multiple universes. And so they began to develop things like cubism. And then you would see famous paintings like Nude Descending a Staircase, when you have this very angular, these angular sections of a body that's kind of flowing down this staircase. It's because of the physics of the day. And these people were not strangers. They would meet in the local bar at night and drink absinthe and talk about what they were doing, and talk about philosophy, and talk about science and physics, and then go home and begin and start to create. So people like Picasso were breakout artists, and then others followed his lead. And they would bring their own worldview to the art that they were creating. And year after year, artists are seeing things that astonish them. And I was highly influenced in college by artists like Franz Klein, and there was just a lot of artists that aren't the prime view people, but artists that I became familiar with. And when I look at my work today, I can still see their influence. So it happens all the time, and it's a good thing.
It's wonderful to listen to those stories, and I thank everybody for sharing those lovely, lovely comments. And yes, it is a pleasure to be talking to you, Lawrence, and to hear about this. As you were telling the story about Picasso, from like over 100 years ago, I think I would have loved so much to be in one of those bars, having those conversations, and then go home and create and be in those kind of hubs. But I also want to share a quick thought about women artists back then, because very few women had the chance of actually doing this. And, in relation to Picasso, I've been studying a lot about Dora Maar, and I know how many influences actually came from her into Picasso's painting. So it is interesting to see how the story then has developed, but maybe that's for another talk. Well, but it was wonderful to hear that.
I have one more story, and I don't have a visual for you for this, but I, a couple of years ago, painted a painting of myself where you can see me twice. You can see me painting the painting, and then you can see my reflection in the mirror painting one of my shaman paintings. This was a nod to the famous Las Meninas painting by the famous painter Velázquez.
Velázquez.
Yes, when he showed himself as the court painter. And I chose to do that because Pablo Picasso had reimagined that Velázquez painting over 100 times. And if you look at Picasso's work, you can see over 100 ways that he reinterpreted that painting. And I decided, well, if it's good enough for Picasso, it's good enough for me. So I gave my own interpretation of the Velázquez painting, or at least took it as my inspiration for the painting I did.
Mm-hmm. So many good stories here tonight. There's one more question coming from Nacho, who's a amazing digital artist and also painter, who's watching here tonight. So what's the principal difference in digital and traditional art for you? That's Nacho's question.
Okay, Nacho, for me, you see, I consider myself a kind of a crossover artist because I've spent decades working with the physical tools and the physical thing on which I was painting, and pushing paint with brushes that are made out of hog hair or hair from the tail of the Kolinsky squirrel, which is called, that's what they use in sable brushes. It's not really sable. It's the hair from the neck and tail of Kolinsky squirrels. And that's one of the things that I think my art, my crypto art, is useful for, because I'm trying to bring some of my love of the qualities that paint on canvas can provide that are emulated now in some of the tools available to digital artists. They can be used very effectively to create lost edges, for instance, which is a thing that you can do in oil painting much more easily than in acrylic, which is what I've used for years. And I have found the digital tools to be just stunningly useful to me. Now, if you'll bear with me, Serena, I believe I have something that will demonstrate this. Yes, if you can go to folder number 05, where it says topic crossing over from analog to digital, there's one image in that folder, and it's called Violet Dream. And there we go. And this one shows a really good, I think, combination of my artistic sensibilities that have grown up through pushing paint. You can see in the background, there's a painterly quality to the background and to the edges and to the basic areas, all those areas in that head. They are very loose and imprecise, and they are contrasting with these very hard-edged circular kind of medallions that I did in a kind of a 3D technique, and they are pure digital, whereas the face is more of a crossover, showing the painterly qualities that you can achieve with some of these digital tools. And this image is an image that I might have been able to create in acrylic paint on canvas, but probably not, because of the very high precision of those circular medallions. But digital allowed me to combine the two almost effortlessly. I was able to do it because I was not having to make the investment in terms of a canvas and paint and brushes and the time it takes to prepare the ground and apply the paint. And I'm reluctant to do that for something that is new, something untested, because if it takes too long, I'm losing money. I'll not be able to pay the rent on the studio. But with digital, I was able to do this in a matter of an hour or two. And it's something that probably I would never have created otherwise. So the difference is it's a slippery subject that as the tools have developed, as the tools have gotten better and better, the differences are getting smaller and smaller, but the differences are allowing me to now explore these kinds of areas that I couldn't do before.
Wow. Thank you. This is, such an interesting way of answering a question. Thank you for that, Lawrence.
Oh, you're welcome.
Do you think we can talk about your upcoming work now? If you tell me which folder I should visit.
About which ones?
Some of your latest work.
Oh, okay.
That you were telling me about.
Yeah, we'll go to folder 6. And the desert was the sea. I've got another story about that.
Here we go.
Okay.
Just pulling this on full screen.
This painting was, this was an acrylic painting. It was probably 60 inches by 40 inches, and it was done in the mid-1980s. It was done because I had done a series of paintings with birds perched on the shoulders of these shamans, and I took them into the gallery where I was selling most of my work. I was really excited about them. And the gallery the owner crossed his arms and walked around and did his gallery owner thing, peering at the paintings. And then he turned to me and said, "I don't think these are going to do anything to advance your career." Well,
was that true or not?
That's true. So, well, I took him home. I was really distressed. And then I got a call from one of the top salesmen at the gallery because he had heard that I had been in and wanted to touch base. And I told him the story, and he said, "Oh, Lawrence, don't worry." The owner's name was Hank, and he said, "Hank hates birds." So
that's why.
So then I decided, well, all right, I'll show you, Hank. I'll paint fish. So I painted this painting, and my wife turned around and looked at it and said, "The title has got to be, and the desert was the sea," because the desert was the sea. Where I live was once the bottom of the sea, and it made perfect sense. I did a series of 10, 15 paintings like this. That's I believe, a Picasso triggerfish over this fellow, and they sold out. And I have revisited this image over the years at least twice. So go on to the next image, if you will. I did this sometime, possibly in the 2000s. And you see that the shaman has changed, and I don't like that fish as well. And it works okay in front of him, I guess. I'm just, the painting sold. I don't know who owns it, but that was another experiment that happened, perhaps 15 or 20 years ago. And now if we go to the next image, just recently, I've brought it back and into the digital world. And I decided to, in fact, include the title on the image. So, and the desert was the sea is there. And I took an image from a painting that the shaman there was from a painting I did, perhaps 7 or 8 years ago. And I modified him, created that kind of seascape background, and then had fun with the orca. as an aside, I was about 30 years ago, I was in a 65-foot boat in Southeast Alaska being chased by a killer whale. So I have a special.
Wow, you were. Oh my goodness.
That it was fun doing this one. And then if you go to the next image, here
wow.
is another one, and this is with a humpback whale. And that was the face in this one was done digitally. And it was just, once again, a revisit of the idea of the desert was the sea. So now let's go to the next image. And
Wow,
here it is
interesting.
again. And it's interesting that the saguaro cactus you see that appears to be drowned in the water, I love cognitive dissonance. And when you see this, you think, well, either that's a huge canvas or a huge cactus under the water, or those are really small whales. Yeah, that's just the relationship. And I've been doing that for decades too. I remember back in the 1970s doing a painting of a tree with an elephant running along the limb of the tree. The dissonance there was you didn't know whether it was a gigantic tree or a very tiny elephant. So I brought those two concepts together in this work, which I really like. Now, admittedly, the fact that I'm doing whales relates to the fact that some heavy-duty crypto coin collectors are now calling themselves whales. And I thought, well, I'll jump in and see if any of that market is still viable. But it doesn't make any difference to me because this work speaks for itself. And sure, there's a relationship to crypto art, but once again, this is something that I could have painted, but probably not. It would have taken too much of an investment of time. I could not have put the lettering in. It would have made me crazy. I just wouldn't have done it. But I loved working on this one. Go to the next one if you would, please, Serena.
I think that's it for this folder.
Okay.
I might have to go on to a different folder.
Okay, and then go to the next. Yeah, that's all of them. So go to the next folder.
This one? Yes.
This one. And here's another example of what I've been up to.
Yes, we briefly talked about the stamps project, and I'm so eager to learn more. Tell us all about it.
Okay. I started working on this a month or two ago, and it was for some reason, I was just looking through old files, and the one in the upper left, there was this shape that had been created on one of the web GANs. It was some kind of neural network. And I can't even remember how I ended up with the shape, but it created a shape that spoke to me. I saw something in it, just like I saw that Coco Pelli in one of these. I saw a monster in this. So I gave him eyes and the fangs and decided to call it a chupacabra because that's something that people talk about here in the Southwest, even though I believe the chupacabra was first seen in Puerto Rico. It has spread around the world. It's this horrible thing that looks like a dog or a man or both together. And I can't remember it, but it does all kinds of terrible things to people. And I lived on, 20 years ago, I was living on 47 acres on a ranch south of Tucson. And I had built, my wife and I had built a steel and glass house. It was glass 12 feet high all the way around a 3,500 square foot room with no interior supporting walls. It was we wanted to live in a loft in the country, so we built our own 3,500 square foot loft. And you would find it was ranch land, and you would find skulls lying around. And so I would find hip bones from cattle and mount them in such a way that it looked like a skull instead of hips. And then I labeled them as chupacabras. So anyhow, that's chupacabra. But that gave me the idea of doing monsters. So I started investigating monsters in other cultures and discovered that everybody has got their own. So Kobold there is he's a German boogeyman. He's a kind of a sprite that can get up to no good, rather like Coco Pelli, and a little bit kinder than the chupacabra. And that led me then to discover Badalsic, which is Italian. One particular small location is bedeviled by this kind of goat man. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'll do one of those. So I created this. And then I started looking for somebody in the UK and discovered the Bogart, which is a helper or a bad guy. He can be a lot of things. And this is my interpretation of that fellow. And then I decided, after I had worked on them, I could turn these into stamps. They already almost look like stamps. So I created that stamp border and then put in some scratches and dust so it looked like they're used stamps. And if you can go to the next image, you'll see them a little larger. So that's Badalsic. And I created that symbol in the upper right, which is the Ethereum logo, and it's over the 3 bars that have become iconic for that. And then it's 4/K, so 4,000th of an Ethereum.
It's 2 o'clock.
And so we've got 3, 4, 5, and 6 there. I don't know what 1, 2, 7, and 8 are going to be, or whether they will be. But if these turn out to be popular, I'll probably do them as well. And these will. I'm talking to the team at KnownOrigin, which is hosting this behind the screens. We're going to see what we can do, the best way we can think of to make these available to people so that they can collect them perhaps and get a full set. And I want them to be affordable. I want people to see them. And I'm really proud of these images. So, well, you got any more questions, or have I answered?
Let me see. Let me go back onto screen because I wasn't able to see them. But that was so fascinating. I was staring at those stamps, and yeah, absolutely fantastic. I need to know more about these stories, from all different countries, and especially the one about Italy, because I didn't know, and I'm Italian, so I should know.
Yeah.
I feel I should know.
Search it up. It's there.
I will certainly do. Okay, so let's check. I think we are nearly reaching time for our talk, but there's one more question from Steve Lee. Do you think digital art will give artists more freedom to explore styles and genres, or make folks lazy? Will buyers know the difference? That's a good one.
I think absolutely digital art will give artists more freedom. My talking about the investment required to create physical art. You can imagine a sculptor, say a person who works carving marble, has to be really thoughtful, really sure about what he's doing, because he's going to spend weeks or months on one piece. For painters, it's usually not so bad. But for instance, when I started out in the business, I chose to do acrylic work because it could keep up with my brain. I wanted to make big changes very rapidly, and I couldn't wait for oil paint to dry. I had to get it changed to make it right, or I just couldn't stand it. And now artists are going to be able to not have to make that investment. So you can explore any style you want. And I would encourage artists to become familiar with at least a little bit about the history of art. Don't discount it. You can really not like most of it and still find something that will inspire you. Borrow freely. In fact, even steal from other artists. Because the important thing is, for me, the important thing is not the process. The only thing that matters is the image. I don't care what the inspiration was. I don't care how you did it. I don't care whether it was a painting, whether you were pushing paint or pushing pixels. I don't care whether your mother loves it or whether it's in a gallery. The only thing that matters is the image. And if it's a transformative, amazing image that attracts me, that I have to see again, then you've done your job well. Now, there is a hazard. If we've got time, have we got time, Serena, for another story?
We do have time for another story.
Okay. Oh, God. Now, this is what happens to an old man. I've lost the train of thought, and we probably don't have time for me to wait for the caboose to come by and tell me remind me what I was saying.
So you were talking about the image, the importance of the image, and that you didn't care about the process, the inspiration, whether your mother loved it or the gallerist or not. But it was very important that that image you wanted to see again and again and again.
Yeah. And when I was starting painting, I had to make choices. And I decided, well, I had learned in college, people would pay more for a pen and ink drawing than for a pencil drawing. Why? Because pencils weren't unique. They weren't special. Everybody knows pencils. Pen and ink, not so much. People would pay more for an etching than for a pen and ink because, etchings, they don't know much about it. They're mysterious things. And then they would pay more for instance, a watercolor painting than they would for an etching. Why? Because, well, that's even more mysterious and it's got better color. And they would pay more for an acrylic painting than they would for a watercolor. And they would pay more for an oil painting than they would for an acrylic because the old masters painted with oil, so it must be better. And in sculpture, this is the God's honest truth. People will pay more for the same sculpture that is poured in bronze than if it was poured in aluminum. Why? Because it weighs more. So you make decisions about how big it should be and what the medium should be, somewhat based upon your potential for making sales. And in crypto art, that's true to a degree, but because you don't have to make that investment in materials and time, you can experiment with all kinds of genres. And I think that's going to happen in the world of crypto art because, and you can see it now, the new artists that are being onboarded are so much better than the people like me that were onboarded 2 years ago. And everybody looks at what everybody else is doing, but there's a hazard. And I need to say this. There's a problem that the crypto community needs to address very soon. And that is artists are being onboarded at a rate that far exceeds the bringing in new qualified collectors that are interested in the art more than in the investment potential. And that means that the market is currently suffering a dilution because you have more and more artists chasing the same number, or a group of collectors that's not growing nearly as fast. And that means that the platforms are going to be happy because they're selling. The collectors are going to be happy because they're going to have a larger group of things to choose from. The artists are not so happy. The ones that have to make a living are not so happy because it's going to be harder for them because they're competing with more people every month. And I think something needs to be done about, and I think what needs to be done is what we talked about earlier, bringing more collectors in, and that's going to be the responsibility of the platforms. Once they've got that medium set up, a way for people to create accounts easily, and then a way for people to display the work in their home or office easily, then I will be able to interest my collectors in collecting not only my digital art, but others as well. When that happens, it's going to completely change the game.
Absolutely. Well, you know, what else to say? I think today we've touched on so many different aspects related to art, the history of art, your own career, and all the different sort of path and experiences that you've done in your life. And, you know, thank you all for your wonderful questions and thoughts about our conversation today. It's been a real pleasure. And I wish to thank you, you know, from the bottom of my heart, really. Listening to the stories has really enriched my experience today.
Well,
so thank you so much, Lawrence.
Serena, I want to thank you. I had watched some behind the screens interviews before, so I had no trepidation about that. You're an excellent interviewer. Your preparation and your enthusiasm and your ability to think ahead and keep all this organized and keep people like me from going off topic is just really stunning. And I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to work with you on this today. I appreciate everybody that tuned in and hope you learned something. I think it was a great experience for me, and I hope it was for you too as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I think everyone had a wonderful time. So once again, thanks to KnownOrigin, to MoCDA for supporting the series of talks, but most of all, thanks to you, Lawrence, and to the wonderful audience we had today. Thank you, and good day, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. We'll see you soon again to another episode next week of Behind the Screens. Take care, everybody. Good night.